I hate that. I will let them all in.
Excellent.
Hello, good morning or afternoon, I suppose, but good morning in some places, afternoon if you're on the East Coast. It's good to see everyone.
Hello, everyone.
We're just going to wait a couple more minutes, see if anybody else pops in, and then we'll be on our merry way. Haha, right when I said it.
Great. Maybe if while we're waiting, if you want to rename yourself and put your chapter name after, that would be helpful.
Callie, I'm loving all of your Disney ears. Obsessed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Perfect. All right. Kirsten, are you all ready?
I am ready.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and get started. Hello, welcome to the chapter management webinar. So happy to see everyone. I am Brooke Stiles, and I have the great honor to introduce our speaker for this section, Dr. Kirsten Fox. Kirsten is our new executive director for Mortarboard. Although she's only been in this position for 3 months, she spent the past 2 decades working in higher education, focusing on areas such as career development. Kirsten is a graduate of The Ohio State University and a former advisor at the University of Maryland. So please welcome Dr. Fox.
Great. Thank you, Brooke. It is really good to be here today and to talk with some of the collegiates. One of the elements of my job that I love the most is the fact that we have so many different members across so many different age groups, from some of our more seasoned alums to our newest members. And I'll admit, one of the groups I don't get to talk to as often are some of our collegiate members, because Brooke and others on the team, our section coordinators and chapter advisors, do such a great job. So this is such a treat for me to be able to be here today. One of the things that I have asked, if you're joining us late, is if you could just put your chapter name after your name, that would be great, just so it also helps to provide a little bit of context as to where everyone is zooming in from. And I'm actually also going to adjust my screen here. Let me go ahead and share my slides. Okay, hopefully everyone is now seeing the Mortarboard logo with chapter management, October 2021. Great. So as we're going through, I want everybody to feel free to ask some questions. Feel free to use the comment, feel free to use the hand emoji to raise your hand. Sometimes it's hard, as I'm sure many of you are aware, when we are sharing screens, it's a little bit hard to both keep an eye on the screen as well as the chat and the people. So if for some reason I miss it, feel free to just kind of interject at any point as well. So is there anybody here? I feel like it's noon on East Coast. Is there anybody that is currently West Coast where it is only 9 a.m.? I was going to give you the award of the day, which I think is probably nothing more than bragging rights for being up and Adam so early, but that is still good to know. And as we go through, this is an overview of what we're going to cover today. So we're going to talk a little bit more about chapter resources. We're going to talk about some chapter reports, big picture, really some of them the operational management aspects, running a meeting, managing your chapter programming, kind of finding your place on campus, those sorts of things. And like I said, I do want to make sure we have time for some question and answer at the end as well, but feel free to use the chat. Just so I have a better idea looking at the gallery here on Zoom, could you use either a one of the emojis to let me know if you are a current chapter president. Excellent. And if you are so I think that was most everyone. Is there anybody here who's on the e-board but not chapter president? Peyton, not to put you on the spot, but what role are you within your chapter?
I'm the vice president.
Vice president, perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Great. Well, and obviously what we hope is you'll take information today, whether you're president or vice president or in charge of, maybe you're the campus treasurer, and take the information back to your chapter as well. And I know there'll be people watching the recording later as well. So welcome to everyone, regardless of your role within Mortarboard. All right, so a few things as we are thinking about where you can find information. Because one thing that you have probably noticed, right, is that Mortarboard is a large organization. So you are president of your chapter or vice president of your chapter, and then we have all these different chapters. And then we have other guidance as well from our national council. You may have heard that we have a national foundation. You've heard about section coordinators. We have the Mortarboard Alumni Association. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, there's all these different components of Mortarboard. How do I even just keep it straight when I'm just trying to get my chapter motivated and running and doing what we have said? So we recognize that it can be pretty complicated. It is also one of the things that makes Mortarboard so unique, right? Is it is a national organization and there are so many members. This isn't an organization that you just come into for a year and then your time is done and then you never hear from us again and we never hear from you again, right? There are opportunities to engage throughout the remainder of your life in various capacities, which is really exciting. Likewise, it is not just Butler University or Bowling Green or North Dakota State. It is chapters nationwide. And so you have this cohort of other members as well across the country, which is really cool because my guess is a lot of you are probably going to go somewhere beyond graduation, whether it's a new city for graduate school, a new city for a job, maybe moving back home if you're away from home. But most of you are going to find yourself in different places and you're going to come across other Mortarboard members throughout your lifetime as well, which is, again, a really awesome opportunity to be able to be part of an organization that is something larger. So, excuse me, that being said, there's also a lot of information that comes from an organization that is over 100 years old. So obviously one of the best places to look is on the Mortarboard website. There are a lot of different places you can go within that website. So you can always let us know if you have trouble. On the website, you should be able to find links to everything else. First and foremost, all of the different handbooks that help provide you some specific guidance for various elements of managing a chapter. You can also find more information about our bylaws and what it means to kind of be in good standing and following the bylaws as a chapter. So you'll also be able to find that on the resources page on the website. How many of you know what Leading Leaders is? And a quick show of hands. All right, well, check your email. Everybody who's an executive board member of their chapter should be getting an e-newsletter called Leading Leaders. And I'm going to give you a pass and assume you just didn't know what it was called. But it is something that comes regularly. And so every month, be on the lookout for this. It does come from a mortarboard.org email address. So you may want to check your spam if for some reason you do not remember seeing this come across your inbox. You'll definitely want to look for that because it is packed full of information, including things such as the webinars, other important dates, deadlines, upcoming events, and so forth. MBITS then is another electronic newsletter, and this goes to all members. So as Brooke mentioned when she introduced me before I was the executive director, I am a member of Mortarboard, having been initiated 25 years ago. So as a member, as an alum, I was also getting a copy of MBITs, right? So that gets sent to lots and lots and lots of people. So maybe a little bit more broad, a little bit more generic, but definitely still full of great information. And then obviously we have all of our social media channels. So Twitter, Instagram, a LinkedIn community, Facebook. We have both a Facebook page and a Facebook community. The community is a great place to kind of post questions to others. The goal of that is to engage more in conversation as opposed to just being a place where we post information. And then have any of you used Slack yet? Great, I see some heads nodding, that's excellent. So Slack is just a great communication channel, right? And so many of you might use it on your own campuses, you might use it amongst your own members, but we have the Mortarboard Slack channel. And so there's lots of ways to engage there, to ask questions, to get information as well. Okay, so we talked about kind of different places that you can go to find information that is sort of written or printed for you to see. But that is not the only way you can get information. Obviously, you're also always welcome and encouraged to contact other people, right? Again, Mortarboard is built on relationships and on people. And so that being said, it's not just the static websites, for example, it's pick up the phone, send an email, send a direct message. You can obviously reach out to your section coordinators. And if you don't know who your section coordinator is, you can always ask our office, but hopefully you're aware of who your section coordinator is. Your section coordinators are Mortarboard members. Some might have graduated just a couple of years ago. Some may have graduated 2 decades ago, but they are really great at being able to provide you a lot of information. They work with each other and work directly with the office. And so they are really in the know from the national organization, right? You've got your chapter advisors as well on campus. I know there's oftentimes a lot of transition within chapter advisors. So keep us posted as well if that is something where you feel like your advisor is maybe not responsive, or if you're not sure how to find a new advisor. Some campuses have multiple advisors, some have one. Some of the advisors have been advisors for 20 years and show up to every meeting. Other chapters, we know that the advisors might take more of a hands-off approach, right? And it depends on each chapter what works best. But do let us know if you ever have any questions or concerns or just need more information about your advisor as well. The national office staff. So obviously, you know Brooke, and today you're getting to hear from me. But we have a really great staff inside our office in Columbus, Ohio. So our national office staff, so Kara really works directly with our alumni. Ellen does a lot of our social media and marketing and some communications. She's going to work with fellowships this year as well. Sarah is you may hear from Sarah, she's more of a behind the scenes, but really works with all of the database areas, and so knows all things about membership in general. And then both Francie and Thomas are our kind of administrative team who really help. They might be the first ones that'll pick up the phone or answer an email when you call as well. And so everybody kind of has different elements where we are the go-to person, but as a small team, you can also imagine you can come to any of us regardless of your question. And we want to make sure you do communicate with the national office. So never hesitate to pick up the phone or send that email. You also have 2 student representatives. So both this year at National Conference, you might remember that Margaret Meyer-Henry was elected. And so she joined, so Kayla is our returning member. She's now in her 2nd year. She's a Purdue grad out in the real world, now working for John Deere. So it is a 2-year term. So every year we elect a new member, but then they stagger members. So they are really the voices of all students as well. So if you have concerns, if you have questions, they also want to make sure they hear from you to pass that information back, particularly to the national leadership. And then obviously other chapters as well. Again, one of the best parts about Mortarboard is that you do have the opportunity to connect with other chapters. So we really encourage you to continue to try to get to know who each other are. Ask whether it's another campus that might be like your size or in the similar geographic area. it's a great opportunity to maybe, especially as we're still in a world where we're hybrid and a lot of our programming is Zoom, you can work with another chapter to even do a program. Okay, so reports. So many of you, most of you, hopefully all of you have submitted your chapter action plan by now. If not, I am sure you've let Brooke be aware of that, and Brooke has let you know that we are still waiting for it. So the best part about the chapter action plan is it takes a lot of work, and I'm sure I see some heads nodding, right? It is not an easy report to fill out, but it is a great way to set up success for the rest of the year. You know, as an organization where many of our members are only part of the collegiate chapter for a year, right? You kind of have to come in and take sort of take the bull by the horns and just keep moving. We recognize how difficult it is while we are still in the midst of a pandemic as well. You know, many of your campuses either were completely closed last year, the class before you had never had the opportunity to really meet in person. So there has been some gaps in information transfer, right? So we recognize that. And so know that you're also not alone in that. And for better or for worse, right? There's the unfortunate part where you're having to maybe fill in some gaps that weren't previously laid out. But the benefit to that is you're setting the trajectory for your chapter for years to come, right? So it's also can be a really exciting position to be in. Your candidate requests and official member reports, that will be part of the selection timeline and process. And so you'll see more about that as the time is coming. Are any of you that are on today doing a fall selection? No, okay. So you'll hear more about this process really for spring. But again, we want you to be already thinking about what your selection process will look like. After that, the next report I have listed is your new officer report. So that should be pretty self-explanatory. So that's really after elections take place next year. So you'll be able to work with next year's officers to get that kind of officer report transitioned. Our annual reports that are due, the chapter annual report is due May 15th. And this will actually include the financial report as well that your treasurer will contribute. And really will just be a summary of the year as well, to make sure that not only have you accomplished what you set out to accomplish, but we'll take information from here as well for some of the other awards, such as the gold award, the silver award, and so forth. So definitely a lot, reporting, but it is all reporting that should be pretty easy to put down on paper, just because you're in the midst of it all year anyway. And again, another benefit of doing that chapter action plan at the beginning of the year. And then your advisor also has a report that is due from the advisor perspective. Okay, oops, it's not going forward. All right, so I mentioned chapter awards, right? So Silver Torch, Gold Torch, Project Excellence, the Freeman and Fox Most Improved Chapter, the Ruth Weimer Mount Chapter Excellence Award, Excellence in Advising. These are all different awards that are given at the conclusion of the year to chapters, right? The Gold Torch does require nomination or application, so that's important to note, as well as, but this is something that all of you, especially by being here today and taking the time to invest in your chapter, should also think about making sure that you are meeting kind of the goals that you laid out and the goals laid out by Mortarboard to be eligible for these awards. So it is something that, again, as a national organization, we take a lot of pride in our awards, and as chapter members and chapters, you too should take pride in the various awards. So more information about those will come out, since they're not due until, they won't be awarded until at the end of next year, but wanted to make sure you were aware. Okay, so I've kind of talked a lot about some of the reports. I've mentioned the awards. This is a lot of information on one screen. So let me also recognize that. And there may be some areas that there's going to be some difference based on your chapter and what works best for your chapter. But this is just kind of a rough timeline as to all the various things that you'll want to think about accomplishing throughout the course of the year, really from August when the national conference took place through the end of your school year, right? The end of your term as a collegiate member. Some of you may come back for a continuing senior, but we'll still kind of look at it just in the course of this 1 year. So a lot of this you've probably already done, right? You've attended the national conference. You may have held a chapter retreat. Hopefully you had some sort of kickoff meeting, if not a retreat, where you did some of the planning. Here you are today at one of the chapter officer webinars. You've hopefully submitted the CAP or will be doing that soon. So that's kind of everything through now. So a lot of the things beyond that, you'll continue to hear more about as we move on. So you can't yet register for a special national conference, or attend the special national conference. That's what SNC or SNCC refers to. But you'll hear more about that. That'll be a Sunday in the last Sunday in January. So January 23rd or 24th. I'll get back to you with the date. It's whatever that Sunday is. So that will be another opportunity to talk about governance. There will be elements of bylaws and changes to bylaws that you can submit now. So again, if you go back to that leading leaders, you will have seen an opportunity to submit changes to mortar board's bylaws. And then that actually will be voted on at the special national conference. So it is not only a time to again gather with other members of other chapters, but it is actually a governance opportunity for the organization too, right? So then you'll come back to your chapter and really think about what works best for you with your membership selection process. And you may even want to start before winter break, but at the very latest, really thinking it through in January as to what that looks like. And again, we know that each chapter might be a little bit different, but knowing the second half of the year picks up quite a bit, we also want to make sure that you are seeing some of these dates now, so you might have the time to really start planning, particularly selection in the fall, right? So there's not only selecting candidates, but selecting honorary members. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later as we're talking about establishing a presence on campus. But we definitely encourage the selection of honorary members as well. We talked about once you have selected candidates, you will first submit a candidate, your CR, your candidate request, to our office. That was one of the reports we mentioned, and that will have to get approval. Again, when exactly that takes place will vary a little bit for your chapter, but that is a process that needs to happen before tapping and initiation. Every February is Mortar Board Week. So this is always around Mortar Board's birthday, February 15th. And so we will do programming from the national office and you'll see reminders, but we really encourage you as a chapter to also be celebrating Mortar Board Week. Again, it's a great way to get your name out on campus, and it's a great way to kind of not only excite potential new members, but make sure other students know about Mortar Board and other faculty and staff know about Mortar Board. Right? Tapping will take place, and then you will have kind of a slew of things sort of at the end of the year, right? Tapping and orientation and initiation in different order. The award nominations, so excellence in advising is a nomination, so that would be due. And then more of your reports as well. So including, this is where you'll now start working with next year's chapter as well, not only to transition them, but to submit the new officer report, but also to make sure that every new member is paid and the conference fee for next year is paid. As of right now, we have every reason to believe that the conference will be held in person next year. So we recognize that the difficulty of your class not being able to come in person, but we look forward to the new class being able to come in person. That being said, side note, we are still accepting applications for the conference advisory board members, the CABs, and those are, so you should definitely think about applying And those members come as sort of a peer advisor or when you're out advisor to current collegiates. And that would mean you would get the opportunity to come and camp to a conference if you are selected. So it's on our website. I definitely encourage those of you that are interested to apply for that. Some more awards, some more reports. And again, you can kind of see those. I don't want to go too much into those because May and June seem like a far time away, but just to give you that overview. And then obviously, in addition to that, throughout the year, you're planning events, you're coming to hopefully some national events, you're having your chapter meetings, really also thinking about fundraising, social events, and so forth. Okay, so running a chapter meeting. Are any of you on the quarter system? So most of you have been back in class since August. So hopefully by now you've had a couple meetings. I am also going to assume that by virtue of just being selected into Mortar Board, you probably have been involved in a lot of student groups, have both been to a lot of meetings and led a lot of meetings. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because this is probably information that you already both know and practice. But obviously just really then as a reminder, you know, the most effective way to run a chapter meeting, you want to have concrete goals for a meeting. You know, I know it can be really hard, we get really busy, but I think sometimes if everybody just kind of shows up with an open agenda, it can be really difficult to accomplish things. There's a lot of really good brainstorming that can happen, but then there's no action that's sort of set. And then we come back a couple weeks later to that meeting and we're just back in the same place with more brainstorming, right? So we really encourage you to make sure that you're setting some concrete goals. Obviously wanting to make sure that all members are aware of the day, time, and place. Again, I know that as a group of leaders being selected for an organization where you already have your affinity groups, it is really hard to find a day and time that works for everybody. So thinking about what works for the majority of members, but then how do you make sure you're engaging those members that can't come, right? Are you recording the meeting? Are you sending out minutes right away? Are you having them submit information to an agenda in advance? Making sure that they are still included in the meeting, even if they physically can't be there. It's not to provide people an out for coming to the meeting, but just knowing that there's oftentimes people can't make it. And the more they feel sort of accountable for coming to that meeting, then they'll continue to engage as well. You know, also with the meeting, because everyone's so busy, wanting to be effective with the time. And so really making sure that you're not taking advantage of their time by starting on time, ending on time. Again, with the agenda, kind of making sure that you're following parliamentary procedure so that even as e-board members, it is not just the e-board that is coming together and then announcing kind of decisions to the rest of the chapter, right? And I would assume most of you as e-board members are having separate meetings outside of the general membership. And it can be really easy to just then come to that general meeting and sort of share everything that you've done. But again, you want to continue to engage those members. And so allowing the general membership to be able to make, to vote on decisions, to contribute dialogue to decisions and so forth. Again, kind of keeping minutes and thinking about ways to not only engage members that can't be there, but also for approval for the next meeting. And then, you know, spicing up your meetings, right? So today's a good example. We're here on this webinar. I'm sort of presenting to you. There is not a lot of excitement and spice that comes with it. But you don't want your meetings to be a webinar, right? You don't want your meetings to be a presentation. Have any of you found really good ways to kind of get the chapter excited, to get the chapter motivated in your general meetings?
One meeting we did Kahoot and people really liked that.
That's a good one. We've done that once. I think Brooke led us on one of those ones.
I've done some like fun icebreakers like in the past with our meetings.
Good. Great. I'll keep thinking about ways. Again, you don't want to spend so much time where you're then not able to stay on track, but I definitely think, you know, some schools, the mortar board members come together and some of them know each other really well. Others, you all have been busy in different areas. You don't know each other. And it's it's been a long time since you were a first year student on campus doing some of those icebreakers. So it is still good, even as a senior, to continue to figure out ways to get to know each other. Okay, so speaking of meetings, right? We talked a little bit about this, but who does need to be present? You know, obviously the chapter, the executive board, knowing that there could be people that can't make it, but obviously trying to find a time that works best for everyone. Once when I was an advisor at University of Maryland, we would alternate, and nobody loved either time, but everybody was really involved on campus. And so we would do we did 2 meetings a month. And I think the first meeting of the month was pretty late at night, like 9:30. It might have even been 10 o'clock at night. But for a lot of students, that wasn't late. And then we did a breakfast meeting, the second meeting of the month, kind of before people went to class. It was 8 a.m., not ideal for college students, but they knew it. They set the time aside. We used some of the chapter fundraising dues to pay for kind of bagels or donuts. And so people came also, and they knew they were going to get some breakfast. They got to see people, and they were done by 9, and people were able to make it, right? So we were creative with the times, but that is important to try to figure out how to get folks there. Trying to get your chapter advisors there as well is really important. They are a person of continuity. So as I mentioned before, you're setting the trajectory for the chapters that come behind you as well. And having an advisor who's going to be a presence on campus after you graduate, the more they're in the know now, the more they're going to be able to help out the next chapters as well. So trying to work with them to find a time, but they can also help to find location. They may even be the one to treat to the bagels or donuts, right? For example. So definitely having the buy-in of your advisors. Do any of you have honorary members on campus? Are you selecting honorary members regularly? Mm-hmm. So honorary members are people that you know, faculty, staff on campus that you want to be a member of Mortar Board, right? And they also go through the selection process where you would submit their name. And again, we can talk more about this. But if you have honorary members, having them come to campus to the meetings is great as well. Oftentimes I suggest people choose honorary members that will provide time to Mortar Board. You don't want them to just be in name only. Sometimes there's some benefit to that if they have enough cachet that it can kind of help heighten people's awareness of Mortar Board. But you also want them to be a good advocate for Mortar Board, right? To make sure that they know about it, they get to know you, and then they can become a voice on campus to others as well. And then think about the committees, especially depending on what time of year it is. And if you need to be talking about fundraising, you want to make sure that whoever's on that committee is definitely present at that meeting, right? Same thing with selection. Hopefully it's more than just one person, but really, you know, the whole chapter, but a subset, a team that's kind of tasked with that and making sure that they are obviously there. And that you're then allowing time for these committees also to meet and present. And then we are always welcome. Anyone, as I mentioned, there are quite a few of us in the national office. And so we're happy to come and say hello, to be able to be just another presence, to be a fly on the wall, to present something, whatever best meets your needs, just let us know. We are always happy to help out. Okay. All right. So we've kind of already talked about this, but obviously allowing people some time to get to know each other, to socialize, right? You also want to make it fun so people want to come on a regular basis. Having some designated breakout time, particularly for those committees we mentioned, maybe having a guest speaker, something, you know, I worked in the Career Center at Denison University, who had a chapter, and we would do some career programming, I think about every other month for the Mortar Board chapter. So we would actually use our office to host the meeting. And then we would spend about 20 minutes just going over something, whether it was, you know, graduate school applications, how to, you know, kind of interview questions, something that was relevant to the chapter. Didn't take up the whole meeting, but just a little bit of time. Doing a small service project. Obviously, service is one of the tenets of Mortar Board. And so maybe it's going together and spending 30 minutes doing direct or indirect service, and then meeting before or afterwards as well. Right. Again, we've talked about team building and icebreakers. If it is around a meal, go if you feel safe, knowing again, we're kind of still in a pandemic, but getting a meal together, before or after. I'm sure as college students, you can think of other ways and places to socialize besides just the local restaurant also. As you're thinking about students in your chapter, again, you are a group of leaders, right? Which is why the newsletter is named Leading Leaders, right? Because you are a leader leading leaders. But remember, not everybody is on the e-board, not everybody's president or vice president. And so, don't look for perfection from all of the other members, right? Because it is a short period of time when you think about it. And so how do you kind of sometimes let some things go and move forward? How do you make sure that as a leader, you're providing really clear instruction? What you also don't want somebody to do is to walk away and then 2 weeks later, they're like, I really didn't know what they were asking me to do, or I wasn't really sure what this role was, so I just didn't do anything. Again, remember, you're not the only one. You don't have to do everything because you're president or vice president, right? You have hopefully a chapter of highly motivated, talented, smart, right, leaders. And so how do you leverage other people's skills as well? It kind of goes to the whole, like, how do you teach others, right? So you're not doing it all yourself. Continue to check on their progress as somebody managing the chapter, especially as, for most of you that are president, or if you're a vice president, kind of stepping into that role, to just help hold them accountable, right? And then everybody always likes to be thanked. It can be a fast-paced organization, especially if you are really only engaged for a year because of the nature of how Mortar Board is set up. And so taking that time to thank your other members, thank other e-board members as well, is really thanking the advisor, also really important. So, and most of all, right, those questions at the bottom, think about how do you delegate responsibility? And it should not just be you, but how do you stay organized? And then how do you help others stay organized and manage tasks? Right? That's really, when you think about managing a chapter, kind of what it boils down to. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about, there's so many different things that you could be doing as a chapter. So we sort of talked about the timeline. So when you think about the life of the chapter, you've got everything from social events to advisor appreciation, leadership training, selection meetings, right? These are just some examples. Some of you may already be doing all of these, but most of you probably aren't. And so don't also look at this list and think, oh my gosh, we've never done an alumni networking event. Oh wait, we haven't actually done a leadership training. Well, we thank our advisor, but we haven't done any formal appreciation. That's okay, right? This is not put up here making you think that you need to be doing everything at 100%. Right? Again, each chapter is going to find their own groove, and your role as somebody managing the chapter is to help that chapter manage, find their groove. In an ideal world, are these areas you're focusing on? Absolutely, right? But some might be a little bit more of a focus, and others might be more in passing or as part of a meeting, and that's okay too. So just, breaking them down a little bit more. Right? Also, where do you combine events? Your social event, your chapter retreat can also be a social event. Right? So did you have a retreat, or maybe you're going to have a winter retreat? And how do you also incorporate elements of social in there? Likewise, when you think about leadership training, you're already all leaders. So are you just bringing something into a meeting or two meetings, or to start every meeting or to end every meeting, where you're talking about how to just be inspired, right? To have confidence, right? What are other elements of leadership that you could potentially work in to meetings? Getting to know each other, chapter advisors, alumni, right? All those different kind of constituents that we have talked about as well. You can do that through formal programs, but you can also do that informally, even just by sending information out to other members as to who's who, right? You might know exactly who the section coordinator is, and that there's national leaders because you came to conference and recognize we have a national president, but some of your members might not realize that. So how are you also making sure that they're aware of kind of the national organization and others? And you can do that through formal programs, or again, as I said, just really informally, kind of more passively. I think there's a lot of value to alumni networking, and it's less about the networking, but more about building connections, right? Because again, you're part of an organization that has been around for over 100 years. And I don't, looking at your chapters, none of you are from a school that has just been chartered in the past year. So all of you have alumni, right? We have a place on our website where you can there's a jot form, and we can tell you who some alumni are in your area if you don't have that list and want to know who they are. I think one of the benefits of something like a Zoom is you don't have to physically have them come, right? We used to work with our local alumni when I was a college student for initiation. We asked them to kind of provide cake and cookies and plates and decorations. And it was great because then we didn't have to pay for it. It brought alumni. It helped parents and students see it initiation. Oh, wait, there's this whole alumni network. How cool is that? But it also met the need of, then we didn't have to fundraise for it or use chapter dues to pay for those types of things, right? So how do you engage alumni? But it doesn't have to be in person. It could be a career panel where you reach out to some people and just have your members meet with 4 people as part of a career panel, right? There's lots of different ways to engage with alumni. The membership, kind of looking at audit and selection, then there's sort of a lot of bullet points, and we've talked about all of these a little bit already. But as an organization that does have 100 years of history, one of my goals is to make sure we have 100 more years ahead of us. And so again, that kind of rests on our collegiate members, right? And not to put too much pressure on you, but it's also, again, a really exciting opportunity that you are carving out what the next 100 years look like for Mortarboard, both on your campus and as a larger organization. And so how do we make sure that membership is sustained in various ways? And so obviously kind of these are, the areas that we want to make sure take place. And so spending time as the president or vice president with your e-board and maybe your advisor to make sure that this is going to happen, right? I think that's one of our greatest asks of you, and something that should be very easily attainable, right? But it might take some intentional conversation. Again, I kind of underline select honorary members. You might be sick of me saying this at the end, but that isn't, it's just a really great way of getting more traction on your campus, getting more buy-in from those members who then hopefully might be on campus for years to come and can be an advocate and voice for Mortarboard in the future as well. All right, so chapter orientation. This was another area, right? Everybody's orientation, a lot of this has probably already happened for you. You can think about what went well, what didn't, and how do you want to set it up for the next class. But definitely making sure that there is some orientation and then helping next year's group orient as well. Same thing, advisor appreciation. Some people have advisors who are really engaged, others are less engaged. So if they're less engaged, how do you make them more engaged, right? But definitely make sure that you're appreciating them in different ways, not only by saying thank you, but also at maybe a public event. And so whether it is a, one of your programs that you invite other members from campus to, or something else, but it's also an opportunity to nominate excellent advisors for awards, but definitely making sure advisor appreciation is noted, because they too will be one of the ways that your campus chapter sustains moving forward. Okay, so service to alma mater was another box that was up there, right? So thinking about your chapters, the 3 ideals, the purpose. Again, we've talked about alumni events, Mortarboard Week, presence on campus, and then the Perch Project. Just to break those down a little bit more, I think everybody knows our purpose, right? We were founded to emphasize the advancement of the status of women. We are not an all women's organization at this point in time, despite looking at who's on, most of our members are still female identifying members, but we are really, I think one of the things that makes us unique is while we were founded really with the advancement of the status of women, we have always been really focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so if you look at our most recent strategic plan, it was just voted on and approved at the conference in August. There is a primary focus on DEI initiatives. That being said, I think we are still at an opportunity within our organization to become more diversified, right? And so again, as a chapter president or chapter leader, this is an area that you'll see it as part of our reporting. You'll hear section coordinators talk about it. You'll hear us talk about it. But how are we increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts as Mortar Board, both nationally, but also within our own campuses and chapters? And then our 3 ideals: scholarship, leadership, and service, right? So I think you already know all about those, but also wanting to make sure that a lot of our programming, a lot of our focus is still around really these 3 ideals. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but Mortar Board Week, around February 15th, 1918 was when we were founded. So that is our birthday. So taking advantage of Mortar Board Week to do a lot of different activities and events as a chapter as well, because there's not many organizations nationally that are over 100 years old, right? It's actually a pretty cool aspect of our organization. Which brings me to the presence on campus, right? So again, as we're thinking about membership and sustaining our members, we know that you were selected because of being leaders, scholars, servant leaders, and so forth. But how many of you have had to explain to another member of your campus what Mortar Board is? Right? Wouldn't it be great if we never had to explain that because just everybody knew? So that is in my head, like that's kind of the goal, right? We want everybody on campus to know what Mortar Board is. And so how as a current leader, are you making sure that that presence is known? And so it's things such as service to alma mater. So as you're thinking about programs, what are programs that you can be doing that also both benefit the university and gain awareness on the university? Again, I'm going to go back to my undergrad, but we would host, we volunteered to do kind of the pre-commencement dinner that the president would host. It was like at a building on campus. So we would get some kind of bigwig alums and some parents and some seniors that would be there. And yeah, we were basically hosting. We were handing out the name tags. We were making sure people got to the right place. But people would ask us about ourselves and we got to say, oh, we're members of Mortar Board, right? And they'd say, ooh, what is that? And there are deans and department heads from the university and a lot of faculty. And so it was a great way just to get the name out. But we were also providing a service to our institution, for example, right? We've talked about honorary members, thinking about other ways to brand your organization on campus. So, that can be through programs. It can be through wearing t-shirts on campus. It can be through the flower sales, which is also a great fundraiser. Many of our campuses do flower sales at graduation time. We have a partner that helps provide them at a really good rate. The pictures that I have, Purdue does the academic planner for campus. Right now, that is not something that you can probably all of a sudden just start on your campus because somebody else probably already is doing it. But it's a great way for them to get their name out. If you open up the front page, it talks about Mortar Board, it talks about their history, and it lists all the current members, right? And thousands of students probably have a copy of this academic planner, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about with getting your name out on campus. The picture down here, so Archie Griffin, the only 2-time Heisman Trophy winner, if anyone's a football fan, worked at Ohio State for lots of years as director of the Alumni Association. So OSU in 2004, their chapter made him an honorary member, right? He actually did end up coming to things. He came actually quite a bit. but it also got their name out to campus because he was sort of an on-campus celebrity in the sense that people knew who he was, right? So it was also very specific. I would say this is where if your university president isn't an honorary member, that might be somebody you'd want to make an honorary member. How many of you are always like, wait, what is the Perch Project again? Right, I see a couple nods. Right, so again, when you're thinking about in your chapter action plan, you probably already thought about that. But Perch Project, has really the same end goal. What is something that your chapter can do that is high visibility, high attention, right? So other people can see. Okay, so that's kind of presence on campus. But we already sort of talked about Perch Project. All right, and then just kind of to finish up, I would also encourage everyone, I mentioned most of these before, but to engage with Mortarboard. Again, one of the best elements of it is that we are a national organization. True story, when I went off to graduate school, on my first or second day, I went to graduate school in Vermont. I was from Ohio. I was walking across campus with one of my new classmates who I just met. She was from Emory University. She had this deep Southern accent. We were talking, trying to find something in common. We found out we were both members of Mortarboard, right? She is now a chapter advisor at a different institution, but that was something that brought us together. My first professional job when I worked in Washington, D.C., I went to a new coworker's house one day and we were in her kitchen and I saw she had a Mortarboard mug. Lo and behold, at Miami University in Florida, she was a member there, right? And it gave us a talking point. It brought us together. And it's really cool because there is this national organization. So continue to engage with us through webinars. Chapter Chatter is what our two student reps, Kayla and Margaret, are putting on regularly. So look for those, and we encourage you. It's just an opportunity to come and talk with them, talk with other chapter members. It's a great way to connect via Zoom. Again, utilizing Slack in the Slack community. You don't have to wait for something to be posted. You could ask a question, right? You could ask somebody, hey, we're looking at trying to do some new Perch programs. Like, anyone have a really good one that you think we could just kind of start on our campus if we don't have one? Use your fellow presidents and other organization leaders to help make your job easier, right? You can also post those kind of questions through the Facebook community. And then to continue to stay aware of what's going on, right, through other social media. Just to make sure you're aware of some upcoming events, I've already mentioned, so special national conference will take place in January, and that is a requirement for our chapters to attend. So we'll get information out really soon. Fusion will take place in April. This is an event that's it fuses you from being a collegiate member to an alumni member, and a great opportunity to sort of, as we welcome you into the alumni network of Mortarboard. In early June will be the Collegiate and Alumni Awards. Hopefully all your chapters will be winning awards. Think about others that you might want to nominate, advisors and so forth. And then there'll also be some alumni awards handed out. And then look from our office as well. We're going to be doing more in terms of, in the spring, maybe some career programming, also some networking and connecting events. We are looking forward to not only take advantage of technology to bring people together more intentionally, but also get back to in-person opportunities. And we know some of you are in areas that might be harder to bring a lot of chapters together. Looking at our reps from North Dakota State, I don't know that there's many chapters within a close drive of you guys, right? But I see, Kate, you're at Butler. We have a lot of chapters in the Indianapolis area. And so that's, on our goal of let's bring some Indianapolis and Indiana chapters together, for example. Same thing with Bowling Green, right? We have a lot of chapters in Ohio. And so let's do maybe a day drive-in where we can do some other events with both alumni and collegiate members. So Brooke is working really hard on that as well. So definitely kind of be on the lookout, not only the rest of your collegiate years, but then also as an alum. We're excited for the direction that we're headed in that area. So I've been talking a lot. We're about at the end of our hour. So I want to make sure that there is time for any questions, feedback that you have, that you want to offer, advice you want to give each other.
I was wondering if you could happen to send the big picture, like that had like the timeline for everything.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we can send the whole slide deck out also. So
Awesome.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
And because this has been recorded, you can also, we'll share that out with everyone too, and you can share that with your chapter.
And I know I touched on a few things very, very slightly. As you probably saw on the chapter operation webinar schedule, some of what I touched on will go take a deeper dive into those areas. So if there's things in particular that piqued your interest and you don't remember exactly what the other sessions are, hopefully you or maybe another one of your e-board members can attend. I think Brooke this is the first one this week of there's 5 more still to come. So
yep. So thank you so much for everyone being here. If you have any questions after this, by all means, please reach out to either Kirsten or myself. More than happy to help in any way that we can. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you more this week. But thanks so much again for being here and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
thanks everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.